Story time of how I found out my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. My boyfriend and I had been together for 2.5 years. His family loved me and my family loved him and they expected us to get married. Well, last year when COVID started, we were actually in different countries, so we didn't see each other for 3 months. During those 3 months, we FaceTimed 4 times a day, and we were always texting. He happened to be quarantining in our hometown, so both of our families were in the same place. I was quarantined in a different country. One day my cousin calls me and tells me that she met a really nice guy on a dating website. I was so happy for her because she had had bad luck with guys. Every single week, her and I would catch up on the phone and she would tell me how much she liked this guy, and how amazing their dates were, and how amazing he was in bed, how sweet and considerate he was. I couldn't be happier for her. Well, when I finally get back home, my boyfriend is super distant and cold. So naturally, I called my cousin and complained. She told me to give him space. She said I should just leave him alone. And so like an idiot, I did leave him alone. One day my cousin calls me and tells me to come over for dinner. When I got there, my boyfriend's car was parked in her garage. I thought it was just her nice way of trying to get us to talk. I walk in and catch them doing the dirty on the couch, come back for part 2. So I walk in on my cousin and my boyfriend doing the dirty on her couch. They quickly get up from the couch and get dressed. Of course, by that time, I'm in hysterics. I'm crying and yelling. My boyfriend instantly got on his knees and begged me for forgiveness. I went up to my cousin and I punched her right in the face. She wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, this is the guy that you've been dating, isn't it? She said yes, and that she was just trying to find the best way to tell me. And so she just thought the best way to tell me was to get me to walk in on her and him doing the dirty. I punched her again. My boyfriend came to her rescue though. Instantly went into hero mode, which made me even angrier, so I punched him too. I stormed out of her house and went back to my house. Well, I told my parents everything. And my dad went over to my uncle's house, my cousin's dad, and he told him everything. She was about to turn 19, so he took away her phone and her car. And I get a phone call from my ex, come back for part 3. So my lying, cheating ex calls me and explains to me why he actually slept with my cousin. He said that he was so lonely and that he didn't know what to do, and that the closest thing to me he could find was my cousin. Right, as if that was any comfort to me. He said I should be grateful that I didn't cheat with someone else. I told him he had totally betrayed my trust and that I could never ever trust him again. And then he confessed that she was pregnant and that his parents wanted them to get married. He said he just wanted to give me a heads up. Then he said that we could still be together but just not tell anyone, so basically he wanted me to be his side piece. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. It was like I didn't know this man. Guess what I did? I recorded the entire conversation. So I went straight to my cousin and I let her listen to it. She was so shocked. She couldn't believe that he would offer to have me as a side chick. Well, I also let my uncle listen to it. He went to my ex's house and beat him up. Honestly, that made me sad, but he deserved it. They now have a baby and he's gained 50 pounds. Trust your instincts, girl, and always record your conversations. Also, how cute are my nails?
Story time about how I found out my boyfriend was married. I had just moved to a new state and decided to download Bumble to meet new people. One day, I matched with this great guy named Alex. He had a good job, his own house, never married, and no kids. We lived in the same town and we started spending a lot of time together. However, I noticed that Alex started doing some weird things. He started coming over unannounced. Before he left, he would always check to make sure that the doors and windows were locked, and when I wasn't with him, he was always blowing up my phone constantly asking what I was doing. A few months into our relationship, he introduced me to his family and I introduced him to mine. It also turned out that we had a ton of mutual friends. He knew my new best friend Laura and her husband from the gym. When we made the connection, he made it clear that he didn't want me being friends with her anymore. Anytime I would bring her up in conversation, he would get agitated. Laura and I were both teachers at the same school. One afternoon, she came storming into my classroom. She told me that she had just had a girls' night with the girls from the gym. They were all showing pictures of their wedding since one of the girls recently got engaged. That's when she noticed that my boyfriend was in pictures with another woman. It turns out he was the husband of one of the girls that she was having dinner with. Part 2 of how I found out my boyfriend was married. When my best friend showed me the pictures of my boyfriend and his wife, I was livid. I saw red and immediately texted him telling him to come over to my house to talk. He ended up calling me on the way home from work but refused to come over to my house until I told him what I wanted to talk about. When I told him, he automatically started blaming my best friend and her husband for telling his business, saying it wasn't theirs to tell. I felt so angry and betrayed, but most of all, I felt stupid for not knowing. I told him it was over and that I was done with him. I didn't hear from him again after that. He moved away and no one at the gym had seen him either. A few months after everything happened, his wife posted on Facebook saying that she was getting a divorce. It turns out that he had beaten her up so badly that she ended up in the hospital. This abuse had apparently been going on for months. I felt that it was a blessing in disguise that I had gotten out of that relationship. Seeing how controlling he was within just a few months of dating, who knows what would have happened if I didn't find out and kept dating him. Luckily, I haven't seen or heard of him since 2018 and I hope that I never do.
Story time about the bestiality children next door. If you don't know what bestiality is, hold on. So I was living in this neighborhood for 5 years. Throughout those 5 years, not one time did my family go and talk to the other neighbors. Why didn't we talk to the other neighbors? Because it's not like we were trying to make friends or anything. We didn't care for them. Well, one day the neighbors' kids were playing outside while I was playing outside. My mom urged me to go over there and play with the other kids even though I didn't really want to. So there was a little boy and a little girl. I went over there and I asked if I could pet their dog because they were playing with their dog. They said yes, and the dog started playing with me and started licking my face. Yeah, keep that in mind. Then we started talking about the bus because we ride the same bus. We have the same bus stop. After playing with them for a while, they invited me inside. I asked my mom if I could go. She said yes. So the little boy ran into his room and then the little girl invited me to her room. So to pass time, I asked her what she does for fun. She said she plays with her brother. And then she asked if I liked animals. Obviously, I said yes, and so she asked to show me a trick. That's when she brings the dog into the room and proceeds to pull down her pants, like for part 2. Part 2 of the bestiality children next door. Like I said, she brings her dog into the room and pulls down her pants. Totally forgot a very crucial piece of information. I was in 5th grade at the time. That's why I did what I did in these next events. She pulls down her pants and lets the dog go at it. The same dog that licked my face previously. The dog went for it. He knew what to do. The only words that I could form was ew. She had trained this dog to do that. So after I said ew, she immediately got up and put her pants up. And she was surprised that I was grossed out like any normal human being wouldn't be. Then out of nowhere, she starts crying and I started feeling really bad. So I told her that I wouldn't tell anybody. And so she tells me I had to switch to my dog because my hamster wouldn't do it. Then she gets up and opens this drawer and proceeds to pull out a dead hamster. She says he wouldn't lick, he would only bite. She starts crying really hard and says she feels uncomfortable and she would feel better if I let the dog do what it did to her. As much as I didn't want to, I wanted her to feel comfortable, so I did it. This is part 3 of the bestiality children next door. Like I said, I gave in. I didn't know how it was supposed to feel. It felt weird, but it didn't feel good. So I stopped and she started giggling and I just felt so uncomfortable, so I wanted to go home. Then she started acting like she was annoyed and started getting really mad at me. But I was like, whatever, and so she let me leave. Well, it was a Sunday that day and the next day we had to go to school, but she wasn't at the bus stop. And so I get on the bus and I go to school that day and everything is fine. Until halfway through the school day, my mom comes to pick me up early. She would never come to pick me up early for no reason. I would usually have an appointment and I would know about it before. I would know if I was going to leave school that day and was going to get picked up, but I wasn't notified. So my mom came to pick me up, and while we were on the way home, she said that my dad had stayed home from work that day, and when we got home, we were going to have a talk about what I did with the neighbor's dog. I promise you're going to want to like for part 4. Part 4 of the bestiality children next door. Baby, that rhymed. Like I said, my mom is driving me home right now and we're gonna have a talk when we get home with my dad about what I did with the neighbor's dog. I tried to explain myself to her in the car, but she wouldn't let me talk. She didn't want me to say anything until we got home. But when we got home, it wasn't just my dad sitting in the living room. The neighbors were there. The mom, dad, and the 2 kids. So I was like, is this a setup? The neighbor's dad is fuming. As soon as I walked into the living room, he stood up and tried to get in my face. Mind you, I was in 5th grade. He did that in front of my parents. My parents told him to back up, obviously, but there was a lot of tension. When he was in my face, he was saying, how dare you force my daughter to do that with our own dog? That's when I knew what the fuck was going on. This little fucker. Basically, after I left my neighbor's house the day before, the daughter went up to the parents and told them that I showed her the trick with the dog and forced her to do it. But this is when things take a turn, babes. Part 5 of the bestiality children next door. Like I said, my neighbor's parents and their kids and my parents and I were all in my living room discussing about this dog situation. So I went ahead and explained myself that she was a fucking liar and that nothing that's coming out of her mouth was true and that she was just lying and lying. And the neighbor's parents weren't too happy about the fact that I was calling their daughter a liar. And the mom just lost it and started screaming at me and going at me and just saying all these mean, terrible things. It was almost as if she had a personal problem with me. Well, baby. So I started crying really hard once the neighbor's mom started yelling at me. I don't know what that did to the neighbor's daughter, but she folded. She said, I lied. I'll tell you guys the truth. She finally admitted that it was her idea and she's the one who introduced it to me. Then once her parents expressed their disapproval, this fucking child, she says, I thought it was okay because I saw mom doing it when dad wasn't home. Introduced it to me. Then once her parents expressed their disapproval, this fucking child, she says, I thought it was okay because I saw mom doing it when dad wasn't home.